Hi everyone. It's been a few months. Actually, I think it was April since I've done my last book haul, which was book haul number 14. So it's been 5 months since I've done one, and I haven't bought that many books, but I have bought enough to where I think I should probably just do some catching up for the sake of catching up, so I don't get too far behind. I think I have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, nine or 10 books, something like that. I have a list in the drop-down box of the books that I'm going to be talking about. I'm just going to talk about them, the author, maybe a little bit, summarize a little bit about each one, depending on how much I know about it. And if you're interested, the books and the titles and the authors are all in the box down there. So this first one that I got is by a writer who always writes the most interesting things in the London Review of Books, the LRB, as you might refer to it. She's a really, really interesting writer, but whenever I've found her books, they're always full price. And I don't really pay full price for books. I'm not that naive. At least here in the United States, when I understand in many places in Europe you don't have retail discount shops and stuff like that, but here we do, so you don't have to do that. Anyway, her name is Marina Warner, and she this is one of her first books. It's called Alone of All Her Sex, and it's about exactly what the subtitle says. It's about the myth and the cult of the Virgin Mary. And I actually have already started this. As you can see, there the bookmark is. I'm only on about page 30 or so. Tiny, tiny print, too. But it's a really rigorous, historically detailed account of... So far, the first 2 chapters are just about Mary in the 4 canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's the first chapter, and the second chapter is about Mary in the Apocrypha, or the Gospels that didn't make it into the New Testament. So I just started it, but it's just right up my alley. It sounds fascinating. I have another book by her, which is an examination of some of the tales from 1001 Nights, which, if I like this, I'll probably run and jump into. So, book number 2 that I've gotten in the past 5 months, I guess, is this. Self and Society in Medieval France. Now, that John F. Benton down at the bottom is not the author of this book. I think he might have written an introduction, and he might have edited the text. But this is not a book called Self and Society in Medieval France. This is actually a series called, it's from a series called the Medieval Academy Reprints for Teaching, or MARTS, M-A-R-T-S. And this is number 15 in MARTS, volume 15. And what MARTS does is it publishes mostly primary accounts that happen to be historical, so primary documents. Occasionally it will publish very important books that are secondary analyses of primary documents, pieces of art, things like this. This actually happens to be a memoir of a French monk who lived at the end of the 11th and the very beginning of the 12th century. His name was Guibert of Nogent, and I'll put the name down below. But Guibert of Nogent. I don't know how you would pronounce it in French. Didi, help me out. But basically, he wrote this, and this book tells you a lot about French society during his lifetime. He also wrote a really, really well-known book about the French during the First Crusade, which is called Gestae they are Francos, or the deeds of the Franks. So he really gives you sort of a lot of information about daily life, sort of getting inside the mind of someone who lived 800 years ago in France. So this should be really interesting. More medieval stuff. This is The Knight, the Lady, and the Priest, The Making of Modern Marriage in Medieval France by Georges Duby. Georges Duby is a very well-known French medieval historian. This is another book that I shouldn't say another one. I haven't started another one yet and neglected to finish it. I started this, got about 20 pages into it, and discovered that it wasn't really what I wanted right now. So I set it aside. But I did read one other book by this author and reviewed it on this channel. It's called Blood Oranges. And the author's name is John Hawkes. And this novel is called Second Skin. I started it. It looks quite interesting, just not what I, like I said, not what I wanted right now. So I set it aside. I'll definitely come back to it later. I had quite mixed reactions about Blood Oranges, but wanted to read something else by John Hawkes to sort of gel my impression of him. This is another memoir, not of a 12th century French monk, but of a 20th century man. It's called Becoming a Man, Half a Life Story by Paul Monette. Paul Monette, other than the fact that he wrote his memoirs and several other memoirish books, and the fact that he died of AIDS, I think, early in the 1990s, hence the reference to Half a Life. He was a pretty young man, I think. I just took a peek inside the book. I always recognized his name, and people sort of pointed him out. He's sort of like an Edmund White-ish figure. Heard of Edmund White, is still around. Wasn't taken down by the AIDS epidemic like so many other great writers were. But I saw this on the discount shelf, and I had never read anything by him before, so I wanted to give him a try. Just sort of peeking around in the pages, he looks like he talks a lot about great writers and art and artists and ideas, and that looks fascinating. Okay. Something else to bore everyone to tears. Helmut Thielicky's Modern Faith and Thought. Helmut Thielicky was not terribly well known. So he was actually a German Protestant theologian who taught in Germany for most of his life. This was just one of the books that he wrote. It was translated into English not long after it was written, and it actually traces what you could call sort of theological thought, theological history from like Descartes to the 20th century. How far does he go? Let's see. Well, he at least comes up through Kierkegaard, so it might just be the 19th century. But he sort of traces, Descartes is a good place to sort of say where modernity begins, because you sort of have the picking of the scientific method and sort of this radical skepticism and everything else, and then you sort of end up with Kierkegaard, which is in many ways the opposite of Descartes, but it's sort of an interesting history of theology and probably a lot of philosophy too in the cover of one book. I got some fiction too. This one and the next one are fiction. This is Isaac Denison, and this book is called Anecdotes of Destiny. And there's also, I think, Erengard is a novella, short little novella. The interesting thing about this particular volume, which is a vintage classic, it has, I don't know if you can see it, but it includes Babette's Feast, which was made into a film in the 80s, I think. And I did not know until very recently it was actually based off of one of Isaac Denison's short stories. Some more fiction by Patricia Highsmith. This is a sort of a bind-up. This says collected novels and short stories. I won't read you all the short story titles, but the novels are, let's see, there's The Price of Salt and Strangers on a Train. And I thought Mr. Ridley was in here. Goodness, what's that? The one Matt Damon was in. The Talented Mr. Ripley. Could I just call him Mr. Ridley? I thought The Talented Mr. Ripley was in here, which she also wrote. Of course, Strangers on a Train was also made into a movie by Hitchcock. For all I know, The Price of Salt may have been made into a movie too. I don't know. But with quite a few of her short stories in here as well. Striking Susan Sontag-ish picture on the front there. And last but not least, more evidence of my unrepentant interest in Christian history and theology. This is Jesus, an Experiment in Christology by Edward Schillebeeckx, who I think was a Danish or Dutch Catholic theologian who was actually very instrumental in Vatican II, and I think was a little controversial during Vatican II and might have had some problems with the church as far as doctrinal issues go. But one of the most important Western European post-Vatican II theologians to come out of the church. Quite a chunky book, but it is truly exhaustive and just a very detailed, historical, insightful, searching, more than book-length account of Jesus, his place in the church, his place in history, sort of like along the lines of Maria Warner's Alone of All Her Sex that she does with the Virgin Mary. This is done with Jesus, except Maria Warner is not a theologian, and Schillebeeckx is. So this is more a strictly theological book, where hers ties in more culture, science, society, stuff like that. This is more single-minded, I guess. But those are all the books I have for you. Like I told you, I didn't buy too many during the past few months. So if you have anything to say about these books, or want me to read any of them, or share my ideas with you about any of them, please let me know. I will be posting some reviews. I've been writing them over the past few days, and I have at least 4 or 5 that I want to post within the next few weeks, and a couple that I might be posting tonight. So I'll talk to you guys later, and have fun, safe reading, and take care. Bye.